If I could, one analogy, because this is the heart of the matter. This is the heart of the matter. You were stuck at a certain level. Somebody on the other side saw what was going on. They told you exactly the thing that was going to make all the difference in the world. And your mind was like, that's the dumbest idea I have ever heard.
Yeah.
When you are, and this issue is at the heart of why working smarter is a lie. Why going to motivational seminars and reading productivity books and why it doesn't make a hill of beans difference. When you are 5 years old and you're learning to ride a bicycle and they take off the training wheels and you're wobbly and you don't have it yet.
Yeah.
Well, what's true? You're already doing everything you know to do. You're trying harder. Okay. You're doing everything that makes sense. And you don't want to get hurt. That sucks. You don't want to crash. That sucks. And you're doing the best you can. And your crazy Aunt Jenny, in this case, your mentor from the mastermind, your crazy Aunt Jenny comes by with some advice. And crazy Aunt Jenny says, what you need to do is go faster, because when you go faster, it's easier to balance. And you say, just like you said to your mentor, that's the dumbest idea I have ever heard. If I can't balance going slow, how is going fast going to help? Now, I mean, this is why they call her crazy Aunt Jenny. Nobody listened to her. She's an idiot. Well, then one day you go faster. Maybe you were going downhill, maybe you got distracted, maybe your dad pushed you too hard, I don't know. You go faster and you feel something new in your body. You feel balance, a new sensation for the first time. You feel balance on the bicycle. The instant you feel balance, your brain rewires itself to make sense and it goes, oh my gosh, now I get it. Now I get it. I see what crazy Aunt Jenny was talking about. Okay, here's the deal. Before you felt the shift, no amount of information made a difference. Hence, seminars, motivation doesn't make a difference. After you felt the shift, no amount of information was needed. So when people come to the Mindset Gym, they aren't getting life coaching advice. We put them on little bicycles because that shift in experience is what rewires the way they think. Not information, but experience.
Yeah.
So thank you for bringing up the crux with the mentor who's like, hey, I think you should do this. And your brain's like, what are you talking about, man? That's a horrible idea.
Heroes are an inspiring group of people. Every one of them, from the larger-than-life comic book heroes you see on the big silver screen, to everyday heroes that let us live the privileged lives we do. Every hero has a story to tell, from the doctor saving lives at your local hospital, to the war veteran down the street who risked his life for our freedom, to the police officers and the firefighters who risk their safety to ensure ours. Every hero is special and every story worth telling. But there is one class of heroes that I think is often ignored. The entrepreneur, the creator, the producer. The ones who look at the problems in this world and think to themselves, you know what? I can fix that. I can help people. I can make a difference. Then they go out and do exactly that by creating a new product or introducing a new service. Some go on to change the world. Others make a world of difference to their customers. Welcome to The Hero Show. Join us as we pull back the masks on the world's finest heropreneurs and learn the secrets to their powers, their success, and their influence, so you can use those secrets to attract more sales, make more money, and experience more freedom in your business. I'm your host, Richard Matthews, and we are on in 3, 2, 1.
Hey, hello and welcome back to The Hero Show. My name is Richard Matthews, and today I have the pleasure of having Jarrod Haning on the line. Jarrod, are you there?
Yes, happy to be here.
Awesome, glad to have you here. So I know before we were hopping on, you said you're out in Columbia, South Carolina. Have you guys started to get your winter changeover yet?
Well, I would say maybe fall. Maybe fall. I remember stepping outside about 2 weeks ago going, oh, fall is here, because it had gone from 90 degrees at night to 70 degrees at night.
The best part about fall is at night you can turn the air conditioning off and open the windows. And I just love that because I don't like the sound of the air conditioning. It drives me bonkers. But
isn't that the truth? Be sure you have a screen. Be sure you have a screen in that window, or you're going to wake up with some new stuff in your house.
Lots of mosquitoes. We're in Florida right now. And man, you know, as soon as the sun goes down, the mosquitoes are like, we're here to take away you and your children.
Knock, knock.
Yeah, that's the way that goes. So hopefully they go away when the winter comes around. But man, fall is pretty much my favorite time of year because it's not too cold for the windows and it's not too hot to open the windows, and you can just turn everything off and open the windows and enjoy the weather.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So what I want to do real quick before we get into your story too much is I'm going to go over your bio. So my audience who doesn't know you gets a a brief glimpse of who you are and what you do. So Jarrod is an award-winning speaker. You've been featured on ABC Nightline, spoken on stages all across the country, with clients across the world, and you've delivered 4 TEDx talks related to mindset performance and have been chosen by TED Global as a featured speaker of the week. Specialize in Nobel-nominated process that teaches you how to think at a higher level, allows you to access different parts of your brain on demand. As a result of this training, most of his clients go on to double their income by purposefully working half as many hours, which I totally love because I've done that over the last 4 or 5 years. I work significantly less than I used to, and I've significantly more than doubled my income in the last 4 or 5 years. So I'm curious to find out what it is you teach about that. So I think it's a great place to start. Why don't you tell us what you're known for, what you do, and who you do it for?
So I work as a mindset trainer. We have a Nobel-nominated process that teaches you how to think at a higher level. We take you to the mindset gym and make you do mindset push-ups. This is the only thing I know of that physically rewires the way your brain solves problems. This work, it tends to be for entrepreneurs, but not always. I have even stay-at-home moms that seek this work out. This is for people that have a tremendous value on maximizing their personal growth and their potential. These are for people that know that the next evolution in life for them is not going to come from attending a marketing or sales seminar or a productivity seminar or a persuasion or motivation seminar. It's going to come from them leveling up as people. These are people that value thinking at a higher level.
That's awesome. And so you do that, I said, mostly for entrepreneurs. But I guess my question for you is, how did you get into mindset training, so to speak? We talk about on this show, every good comic book hero has an origin story, right? Whether that's they were born a hero or they were bit by a radioactive spider. It's the thing that makes you into the hero you are today, right? Did you start in a job, or did you start off doing how did you get to this place essentially? Where'd you come from?
I come kind of from an entrepreneurial family. My mom, my dad, my brother, my sister, everybody has just sort of been entrepreneurial as we grew up. So that part is in my blood. My background, though, is as a classical musician. I spent 20 years full-time classical music. I was the principal violist with the South Carolina Philharmonic. And it was great. It was wonderful. I loved it. But after 20 years or so, I felt that life was calling me to step out and do something different. I wanted to continue to grow and level up as a person. But the common ground there between what I was doing in classical music and what I'm doing now as a trainer in the mindset gym, the common ground is when you're in music, whether you're clapping your hands to the radio, whether you are singing in the shower, anytime you're engaging and co-creating with music, you're using more different parts of your brain than any other activity. This is a sharp contrast with athletic performance, where the better your body is performing athletically, the less of your brain you're using. And the reason is the body can't afford to be sharing glucose with the brain. It needs to go to the big muscles. This does not mean that music is better for your brain. It's just a different way of using your brain. So back then, when I was in classical music, I also would go to conferences and speak, and I was training business leaders in how to access different parts of their brain on demand. This helps them to level up, be more innovative. So when it became time for me to leave classical music as my safety net, it was just a logical progression to just go full-time in the mindset gym.
So I feel like you'll appreciate this. This is kind of a random side note, but I just finished, I mentioned, and most of my audience knows, I live in an RV, and I just finished ripping apart my entire dresser that I had turned into a desk and rebuilt it as an entire desk so I could do this. So what I've got here in front of me is my keyboard tray. And if I push the keyboard tray in, right below it, and I pull it out, I have a piano. And so I can push the piano back in and pull out my keyboard tray again. But I built a piano tray into my desk so I could continue learning to practice the piano, or learning the piano, because it's one of my, I don't know what you call it. I have a incessant need to learn things. And so I have to pick new things. And a couple of years ago, I was like, I need to learn to read music and play the piano. And I've gotten to the point where I can read a melody line with my right hand and I can read a melody line with my left hand. I haven't quite gotten to the point where I can do both at the same time. Like, I don't know how to make both my hands talk to each other. But it's interesting how learning to read music and learning to play music has helped me in my business to have more creative solutions to problems and other things like that. I have noticed a correlation in learning music and how that's helped my thinking. So that's side note.
Have you, did you come across the Piano in 21 Days course?
I haven't. I've been using an app called Musician.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's
And
fine.
it has blown me away. Like, I went from not being able to read music to being able to read music in about 6 weeks using their app.
Awesome. Okay, it is a slightly different take. So being able to read music, this is totally unsolicited advice, is a different skill, but it is not in any way related to playing the piano or being a musician.
Yeah,
this is one of the traps
that.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? I remember when I was getting my undergraduate, I really looked down on jazz musicians and bluegrass musicians and country musicians, and I looked down on them because, well, you know, I was a true musician. I could read music. Ha 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 ha. They were ignorant. These ignorant musicians, right? But then I remember I was getting my master's degree. So here I am, principal viola, top of my game, best in the area. But if you asked me to play something, I couldn't do it. I would say like, my recital is still 3 months away. I'm still working on, I haven't, I need some music. I wasn't a musician. I was just a fancy decoder ring. The jazz, the bluegrass, the country, those are true musicians. You ask them to play something, they can play all day. They do not need you to tell them what to play. And so when I realized that I was just a fancy decoder ring, it changed how I valued and defined being a musician. So at that point, I started playing in bands and anywhere I could, improv, to get a taste of what it was to create music and not just decode dots on the page. But the Piano in 21 Days course, shout out to my friend Jocks, it just takes you straight to playing music. So you can sit down and play any contemporary song that anybody hears on the radio at the end of 21 days. But you're not doing it by decoding the dots. You're doing it by understanding the basic structure and kind of improvising on top of that. Just a different way of learning.
So one of the things I've noticed, and that's where I'm like, that's what I'm looking for next, is because I've noticed what I'm learning is I'm learning how, I like the way you put that, decoding the dots. And like, I don't exactly know how to describe this because I'm not a musician myself yet. Is like, my wife, she wants to sit down and like teach my daughter how to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and she can just play that. She doesn't have to know what the notes are or anything. She can just pick a key and play the song. And she can do that on pretty much any instrument that exists. I don't know how she does it. She's got magical voodoo powers is what I call it. But like, in order for me to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, I had to go to the sheet music store and buy a $4 copy of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star so I could look at the dots and play the thing. That's where I'm at. And I'm like, I know that's not the same as making music, but like, the more I'm starting to understand the fundamentals of the music, the more I'm starting to actually hear the music that I'm listening to, if that makes sense.
Good.
Yeah. And so I'm like, I know the next thing I need to learn how to do is how to play the music and not play the notes, which I know is like, I don't know if that would make sense to someone who doesn't play music. but
weird. That is weird. So if you don't play music, there is a definition of music that he's referring to. And I think it was coined by Debussy, the classical composer. Many people have repeated it, but the definition goes like this. Music is the space between the notes. It's what's happening in between making noise. And so music is just these little snippets here and there. And when you learn music from the page, from the sheets, from the little dots, your brain gets so focused on the right note and the wrong note and what to do next that you lose feel and touch and timing and creativity and color. And it's very difficult. You'll spend 20 years of your life trying to create art starting from that framework. However, if you learn music like a street musician or by picking up a guitar at your friend's house, within a week, you are creating art and color and texture and touch just because your brain is operating differently. You're more of a creator working with the materials you have as opposed to a computer scientist decoding dots.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've noticed with that is that there's a lot of parallels for me in so like one of the things we do, we're in the marketing space, right? And marketing is all about getting people to change the actions that they do, hopefully for their own betterment, right? So, you know, you have this problem, we have this solution. If I put the right marketing in front of you, I can help you solve that problem and improve your life, right? That's what marketing is all about. And what's interesting is there's a lot of frameworks and there's a lot of things that like are basic human psychology that you can make the analogy that they're very similar to the dots on the page, right? Like you can do the right things and you can put them in the right order. And someone who follows the frameworks and puts all this stuff in the right order, they'll hit the notes and they can have success, right? If I can sit down in front of a piano and I can play music, but the feel is different than like I got a friend of mine who's coming to visit this afternoon who plays music, right? And he just closes his eyes and puts his hands on the piano and he plays, and he'll play the same song that I played. Like I could only do the melody line because I can't do both hands, but like he'll play the whole thing. And at the when he's done, you're crying, right? Like that's, and there's that difference that
yes,
I'm playing the notes and he's making music. And the same thing happens in business and in entrepreneurship and in copywriting, that you can hit the right things, but you have to learn the space in between, right? You have to learn those other pieces that sort of bring the texture and the contrast and the life to whatever it is that you're doing.
There's a interesting correlation with what you described and what your friend is doing. And I learned this summation from the world of golf. A friend of mine who was an avid golfer taught me this phrase, and this sums it up. The phrase is train and trust, but never try. What it means is you put your time in practicing the fundamentals. And if you're practicing music, if you're practicing your fundamentals in music, your practice time doesn't sound anything like music. It just sounds like noise because you're repeating a really small section until you perfect it over and over. So that's training. You're training the mechanics and fundamentals. But then when it comes time to play, or golf, if you will, you trust that your training will be there and your brain and body will be able to access it and implement it as it can at the time, but you don't try to do what you were practicing. You give your brain and your body permission to create something new. And when you're in that space of kind of allowing, magic happens. But when you get in that space of trying to make it perfect, you sound ridiculous.
Yeah. And what's really interesting is like that what you just described is almost exactly how I approach copywriting for the stuff that we do. And I know like there's a lot of rules that go into good writing, and like I'll do things like study sentence structure and study psychology, like how you can impact people's emotions by how you use words and all those things. And it's that same concept of practicing the little things. But if you just do that, you sound ridiculous. And when I sit down to write, it's a different state of mind, and you don't really care about sentence structure or syntax or the templates. You just let it come out. And then when you go back and look at what you've done, you realize you hit all those things. You used the structure and you used all those things because you've trained those things into you. I don't know if that makes sense to people who don't operate at a high level in whatever their thing is, but it's a different state of being from practicing to actually like performing.
It is. And people get caught in a trap with the practice perfection part. They're like, well, I'm not ready yet. It's not good enough yet. I haven't mastered yet. And while it does take 20 years for your brain to absorb the fundamentals good enough that it stops thinking about it, you can short circuit that by giving yourself permission to screw it up along the way. Give your brain permission to create. And you're talking about copywriting. There's a great marketer, Alex Mandossian. I don't know if you know him. He is kind of fathered and mentored pretty much anybody who's anybody in the online information expert space. They have all been one of his students at one time. Alex Mandossian is legendary, but he's not just good. Every day, first thing in the morning, his morning routine is to take the copy of a master and write it out again by hand. So he's going to Dappled Ogilvy, he's going to Bill Glazer, he's going to Dan Kennedy. He's taken something they created and wrote, and he's copying it by hand to teach his brain the fundamentals that they were using when they were creating that copy. So he's not a master marketer by accident.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the other things that popped in my head as you're describing that is I have the same kind of thing learning to cook, right? Learning to cook at a high level. That's one of my other hobbies, piano and cooking, because I like music and I like to eat. And one of the things I've noticed and from learning from chefs is that the basics is like learning how to train your palate on whatever like the major flavors are. And then like how to do specific like techniques in cooking. And then like once you sort of master those basics, you can take recipes or take other things and you can make them do what you want. Right. And you can taste things and be like, oh, this needs an acid or this needs a XYZ. And then you can like, you know, the recipe calls for lemon. You're like, but I don't really like the way lemon fits in this flavor profile. I want to do something different. You can choose different acids because you sort of know the fundamentals and you can create art with food. And so it's the same process, no matter sort of what you're doing, is you have the fundamentals and then you have performance.
Tim Ferriss was talking about that when he set out to master cooking, learn how to cook. And it was kind of like
that's where I got my start, was from his 4-Hour Chef book.
4-Hour Chef. And the way he described it, it made it sound like an embarrassing aha, a revelation he wasn't expecting to have, when he realized it really just comes down to a handful of fundamentals that create a basic set of palette colors. Yeah. And once you have that, you're free from the recipe. You're free to recreate the recipe or create a different type of recipe. And the music is similar to that. If you go like the play-by-ear route, like Piano in 21 Days, you're learning what those basic concepts are so that you can mix them together. For the like the rock and roll guitar player, he's playing that incredible riff, mind melting, super fast. But in his brain, when he looks down at his guitar, it's a series of lights, if you will, that have lit up, that are showing these are green notes, these are yellow notes. You're safe if you play any of these. You're starting to stray if you play these. The same with piano. They look at the keyboard and it's not white and black. It's like colors. Any of these notes are safe. These notes aren't as safe, and these notes are really dangerous. And it becomes a playground to create once you get those basic concepts.
Yeah, so that's really fascinating. It sounds like, if I'm understanding correctly, what you do is you teach people how to access that second part of your brain. All right, am I understanding that correctly? Is that what you do? Is you teach people how to make that transition?
How to access different parts of your brain on demand, but the end result is thinking at a higher level. So, like we talked earlier, the less you work, the more you make. And immediately you're like, well, yes, that's true. I mean, I have actually experienced that. That's true. It's like a law of physics. Mm-hmm. Well, the same in other parts of our business. When we get stuck and we don't know if we should focus on this to grow or that to grow, or don't have enough time, don't have enough money, can't get the right help, or whatever's going on, in that situation, it's like you're in the weeds and you're just kind of guessing and, well, maybe I'll try this and maybe I'll try that. And when people get stuck in the weeds, a common response is to work harder and faster. But working harder and faster is just more of what you're already doing. It's just more of the weed. So what I do is, rather than guess, rather than work harder and faster, what we do is we print up, I'm going to hold it up to the screen here. We print up a graph of your thinking patterns. And by doing this, gets you on a ladder above the corn maze so you can see the whole picture. Immediately looking at this, you know exactly where the blind spot was that was tripping you up. You know exactly where your strength is that will get you out of it the fastest. There's no guesswork. So yes, tapping into other parts of your brain, accessing different networks, different thinking patterns, but the end result is thinking at a higher level, a more efficient level, so you can maximize your potential.
So it sounds almost magical, which brings me sort of to my next question about your superpowers. Right, so every iconic hero has a superpower, whether that's a fancy flying suit made by genius intellect, or the ability to call down thunder from the sky, or super strength, whatever it is. In the world of business, we have what I call a zone of genius, right, which is either a skill or a set of skills that you were born with, you developed over time, that really energize all of your other skills. Right, it's a superpower is what sets you apart and allows you to help the people in your life slay their villain, so they can come out on top in their journeys. And the way that I like to frame this is, if you look at all the skills that you've developed over your life, there's probably a common thread that ties all those things together. And that common thread that you see as the base of all your other skills is probably where your superpower is. And I'm curious, what do you think, with that framing, your superpower is in your business, and how does it relate to what we've been talking about so far?
So for me, I would say it's a way of viewing the world. It's a way of thinking. And it's an ability to communicate that in a way that makes a difference. When I was in classical music, I was a freelance musician, and I was living a freelance musician life for a long time, and I was miserable. It was frustrating. I'm working 40 hours a week. I'm making 50,000 a year, and it was just the hustle and grind. And I mean, part of that is the environment that is music. Music can be had for free anywhere. Why should I have to pay for it? So there are limitations. People playing bar gigs for 3 hours and they leave the night with $20, but they've spent 30 of it on food. Just in that ecosystem, there are some natural limitations. But at the same time, there are people in music that are making millions and millions of dollars a year.
Yeah.
So after years of being frustrated, what's going on, it dawned on me that it was how I was thinking about music, not music itself. And wherever you're at, whatever's going on in your life, don't have enough time, don't have enough money, don't have the right support, can't scale, whatever's going on, you're only one thought away from your next breakthrough. And for me, that thought was, what if instead of making music responsible for my income, I made me responsible for my income? And I made 3 changes. And that took me from 40 hours down to 20. And it took me from 50,000 up to 100,000. And I'm happy to share what these 3 changes are in case anybody in your audience is in a creative art space. So this applies to martial arts schools. This applies to poetry and reading and blanket making and crafts and music and dance and any venture like that. This applies. So the 3 changes I made are, I took my time out of teaching. So the first change is, you need to be teaching what you're doing. If you're an artist and you are getting your paintings put up in restaurants and you're selling them and that's where your income is coming from, for crying out loud, just record yourself while you're painting and talk so that people can learn how to paint like you do. That becomes a second income stream. So I was teaching what I knew in creating music, but I was doing it one-on-one, the worst way possible. I took my time out of that equation. With my time no longer the bottleneck, there was no limit in what I could do teaching. Now, there's a lot of ways you can do this. You can write the book and the manual that other teachers use or other schools use. You can do online video courses. You can do group lessons. What I chose was kind of a hybrid, and I call this the doctor's office. When you go see the doctor, they don't check you in. They don't answer your questions. They don't tell you how to take your medicine or follow up or insurance. They don't do any of that. They don't take your vitals. The doctor is really only needed for one thing. So they come in the room for 5 minutes for that one thing, and they leave. And they go into the next room, and they have a hallway of rooms that they're going in and out of. Well, it's the same with music. My students don't need me to unbox their instrument or get tuned or get warmed up. They need me to come in and show them the one exercise that's going to make the biggest difference and how to do it for that specific part of the page. So I would come in for 10 minutes and I would do that. And then I would go across the hallway to the next student and I would go down the hallway back and forth. That one move caused me to double my teaching income without charging more money. The students were thrilled because they could work out the kinks without somebody looking over their shoulder. The parents were thrilled because they remember how miserable it was taking piano lessons with a teacher looking over their shoulder. I was thrilled because I was making more money and reaching more kids and having more fun. So that's the first thing. Be sure you're teaching what you know, but take your time out of that equation so it's scalable. The second thing I did in music was I made my students stop taking their money down the street. They would come to me and say, hey, we've got a bunch of extra money burning a hole in our pocket. What should we do with it? And I would say, oh, don't give it to me. Take it down the road to the music retail shop. Well, that was stupid. So I stopped that nonsense. I went down to the county courthouse and I spent 15 minutes filling out a retail license. I called up my favorite music suppliers. I said, hey, I've got a small shop in this town. I want to carry your stuff. How can I get started making sure my people have access to your stuff? And they're like, great, just let us know what you need. So my students would come in. Hey, we've got money burning a hole in our pocket. We want to get whatever, some accessories, some music, an instrument, a music stand, whatever they wanted, right? I'd say, great, come back next week. I'll have one for you to choose from. So I'd call the store. They'd send it to me. I didn't have to warehouse anything. I didn't have to store anything. I didn't have to manage any, none of that. It just would come the next week when my students would need it. That one move put 50% more money in my pocket for that year just by spending time filling out a retail license. So whatever you're in, if you're teaching what you know, your students are going to need equipment to succeed with it. What's the equipment? And just become the supplier for that. Call up the wholesale distributors of it and supply it direct. It's free money waiting for you. The last thing I did was I stopped considering myself a performer and I started considering myself a booking agent. I took my time out of the equation for playing gigs. So instead of playing them, I started booking them for other musicians. Because my time was no longer a factor, there was no limit on the number of gigs I could get paid from. Those 3 changes cut my hours in half and doubled my income as a freelance musician.
That's amazing. And I, as you were talking, I noticed a lot of similarities in the things that I do with my clients. Everything from helping them productize their knowledge so they can get themselves out of what they're doing, to learning how to be like, you have to figure out what the important things are, right? Like what's the stuff that actually impacts revenue? Those are generally the important things in business, and double down on those things. So it's really a genius thing. But I think probably one of the things that I find really interesting is your doctor's office metaphor you used for how you were doing your teaching, right? Because instead of being over someone's shoulder, one of the things I mentioned earlier, I've been learning to play the piano. And I'm learning to play the piano from an app. There's no human beings involved. And one of the things I've noticed with that is that there are limitations to learning that way, right? And I'll hit places where I'll get stuck and I won't know how, like, because I don't know what I don't know, right? So I'll give you an example. So for people who know music, they'll understand this perfectly. You got a treble clef and you have a bass clef. And there's space in between those. I didn't understand the relationship between those two. Like, I didn't understand that middle C is the only line in between the 2 bars. I've seen on music that on the treble clef, sometimes the notes go like way down below it. And sometimes they go way up above it. And then on the bass clef, you'll see the same thing. Sometimes the notes go way above the bass clef and sometimes they go way below. I thought the bass clef meant notes that are in bass, whatever that is, and that treble clef was notes that were in treble. And it didn't dawn on me that for piano music, the treble clef is just notes you play with your right hand, and the bass clef is notes that you play with your left hand, and that's it. And so I didn't understand the relationship between the two. And I was talking to a music teacher who was just at the pool with us, and he was telling me that. I was like, can you explain to me how this works? And I was like, because I don't know where the crossover happens. Like, how do those 2 staves talk to each other? And he was like, it's just one note. And he's like, and he made that one distinction for me, that it's left hand and right hand. And now all of a sudden I see the progress of the notes from one side up to the next, like how they talk to each other. Because in my head, I was like, I don't know where these notes fit in with these notes. Like, it didn't make sense to me. And I needed a human being to come in and take 2 seconds for me to describe my problem and understanding, and 2 seconds for him to answer it. and changed my entire understanding of music. Right. But it was like, it was a 30-second thing.
Very helpful. And that's all that was needed to move the needle that day.
Yeah.
In traditional lessons, and you haven't experienced the misery that is a traditional piano lesson, but it goes something like this. You sit down, you get your music out. Maybe your teacher will have you play a scale or something to warm up your fingers. And then you go to play what you were supposed to be practicing all week. And you reach out to the keyboard and you're just about to play and your teacher stops you and goes, no, it's like this. Okay. So then you go through again and you reach out and maybe your teacher lets you play a handful of notes until you make your first mistake. And then they go, no, it's like this. You got to do it like this. And it's like this constant stopping and creating. You don't have a chance to build momentum. And in your head, it's like, geez, lady, this is my first time ever doing this. It might take me a while to get back in the flow. And your teacher's looking at it like, that's not the right way to do it, from somebody who's been doing it for 40 years. So with the doctor office model that I had, the kids had safety to make mistakes and build momentum and get a sense of mastery without worrying, was I going to stop them or was I going to correct them? And then after they started to get a feel for it, then I could come in and now they're kind of playing their best and we can really have a good conversation about it.
Yeah. So relating that back to your superpower is learning to look at the world differently, right? And be able to be like, here's my problems and how can I look at this problem differently and come up with better solutions. And so what I'm curious is how does that play into how you help people now? Right, that skill, right? I know you had your 3 rules you use for your music business, but how do you translate that into what you do for people now?
The 3 rules for what are happening right now are, if something isn't going well, you keep hitting the same obstacles. One of the ways you know that you're hitting the same obstacles is because every year, at the end of the year, you say to yourself that next year is going to be different. And you're really going to apply yourself, and all you need to do is try harder. And then at the end of that year, you say the same thing. And after a while, you can look back over 3 years and realize you've been promising yourself that all you need to do different is try harder for the past 3 years. That's a sign that it's not a work ethic problem, but rather a blind spot in the way your brain is trying to solve the problem. Something your mind hasn't seen yet, or a thought you haven't had yet. So there's 3 things that are going on. Number 1, you are already doing everything you know to do. You're not a slacker. This is kind of a delusion that we tend to tell ourselves. If things aren't going well, we automatically assume, well, it's just because I'm not working hard enough. That's what it is. Yeah, sure, until you document your time and find out that actually you're not a slacker. You are busy as can be. So number 1, you're already working hard. If there was something else you could be doing, you would be doing it in that situation, right? So pat yourself on the back. That also means that trying harder isn't going to make a difference, or it would have by now. Number 2, everything that you're doing to solve that problem, to grow your profitability, to grow your scale, to grow your productivity, to grow your staff, whatever it is, everything you're doing is a pretty reasonable, smart, rational idea. You're no dummy. I mean, you wouldn't do stuff that didn't make sense. What that means is that working smarter isn't going to make a difference, or it would have by now. Working smarter is a lie. The brain can't think of what it can't think of. It can only think of what already makes sense. And what makes sense is what has you in the situation to start with. So number 3, a breakthrough in your situation, a thing that will absolutely transform your way of life and business, will at first seem like a bad idea, or you'd already be doing it. And that's the pickle, because we can't read the label from the inside of the bottle. The brain cannot think of what it cannot think of. And that thing is your ticket to freedom. So how do you access the thing? There's lots of ways you can do it. The most efficient I know of, though, is just to get your thinking patterns mapped out with the mind scan, because there we can see right away where your ticket out of the corn maze is.
So I'm going to take a stab in the dark here and say one of the other ways that you can do that is by having a mentor who has perspective you don't have.
Yes, that falls into another set. There are 4 C's that I would say anybody can access a higher level of thinking in their life with. The first one is a champion in your life. This does fall under the mentor category, but a caveat, you want to be careful with the mentor champion in your life. The champion is somebody who is already doing the thing that you want to do. They are already demonstrating results and proficiency. The problem is it's how they think. It's just who they are as people. It's like the water they swim in. And when it's the water you swim in, you have nothing else to compare it to. It's all you've ever known. So when you ask the champion, how do you do that? They're going to make up something that is not the real reason. It's the water they swim in. It's all they've ever known. Yeah. So it's very dangerous asking a champion or a mentor how they do it or what they think you should do. They're going to make up something. That's just how the subconscious is. What you do instead is sit on the floor in their office. Watch them take calls. Write down what you notice about how they're being as people, how they're showing up, their attitude, their perspective, their energy. Just write that down. If you'll do that for a couple days, your body starts to become an antenna that absorbs that energy, and you start thinking that way too. But for crying out loud, don't ask them, because they're going to make up something that isn't necessarily the truth. The second one is a coach. Nobody goes to the Olympics without a coach. A coach has a much different skill set. They know the specific exercises and the specific order that teaches your mind and body that specific result. In my world, we do that with mindset push-ups because that's what rewires the thinking patterns. The next one is a community. Now, many people screw this one up too. You can't join a community of people who want the same thing that you do. That's just more of what you already have. You have to join a community of people that have what you are seeking to grow into. Now there's 2 problems. You're not like them yet. So in order to survive in those waters, you're going to have to rewire yourself. The second one is there's a high cost of entry. It's very expensive to join those types of communities. You either got to pay a lot or you got to grow a lot in order to stay in. The last one is a crucible moment. A crucible moment is a fiery test that is so intense that your mind has to rewire itself in order to stay alive. This is a
level up moment.
Big trauma. For people that have run a 5K, they're like, yeah, I could do a 12K someday. I could do that. Maybe I could do a half marathon. Sure, I could do that. Like you can see it. It's within the realm of possibility. For somebody who's run a 5K, a crucible moment would be signing up for a 100-mile ultramarathon. Like it is so far beyond the realm of possibility. But they sign up, they get it going, and 30 miles in, their brain is like, you are about to rip your knees out. If you take one more step, you're going to be permanently injured for life. And they have to decide, either I'm going to honor my word or I'm going to respond to temporary pain that won't be here tomorrow. They have to decide, what do I value? Technically, I can take one more step. It's not going to kill me. It sucks. It's miserably uncomfortable, but it's not going to kill me. So I'm going to take one more step. And at some point in that 100-mile, their brain rewires itself to what it understands is possible for their life. But it was a crucible that created that new connection.
Okay, so for anyone who's listening, that last few minutes was just brilliant. There's so much that you just went over. I don't even know where to begin with all of that, but the mentor part, the champion,
yep.
The champion part. One of the things I like, if you have, I have the what would you call it? I have the benefit of having a few people in my Link's Guide to Superhero Cup. A champion, specifically the champion of Earth. Have a mentor in my life that has both the skill sets of having what I want and is a coach. and he's in one of my mastermind groups. And I remember having one of those moments where like we were coming in and we're just sharing things that we're doing. And he pulled me aside afterwards and he was like, you have this problem. And he's like, and here's how you solve that problem. And I remember looking at him and thinking, you're crazy. Because like,
yes.
and I remember looking and thinking, you're crazy, because I was like, I didn't see the world the way that he saw it. And he knew that he thought I was crazy. And he goes, I know that you think what I just said to you is crazy. And he's like, here's what I want you to do about that. I want you to forget about that and do what I told you to do anyways. And he's like,
time out.
Okay.
If I could, one analogy, because this is the heart of the matter. This is the heart of matter. You were stuck at a certain level. Somebody on the other side saw what was going on. They told you exactly the thing that was going to make all the difference in the world. And your mind was like, that's the dumbest idea I have ever heard.
Yeah.
When you are, and this issue is at the heart of why working smarter is a lie. Why going to motivational seminars and reading productivity books and why it doesn't make a hill of beans difference. When you are 5 years old and you're learning to ride a bicycle and they take off the training wheels and you're wobbly and you don't have it yet.
Yeah.
Well, what's true? You're already doing everything you know to do. You're trying harder. Okay. You're doing everything that makes sense. And you don't want to get hurt. That sucks. You don't want to crash. That sucks. And you're doing the best you can. And your crazy Aunt Jenny, in this case, your mentor from the mastermind, your crazy Aunt Jenny comes by with some advice. And crazy Aunt Jenny says, what you need to do is go faster, because when you go faster, it's easier to balance. And you say, just like you said to your mentor, that's the dumbest idea I have ever heard. If I can't balance going slow, how is going fast going to help? I mean, this is why they call her crazy Aunt Jenny. Nobody listens to her. She's an idiot. Well, then one day you go faster. Maybe you were going downhill. Maybe you got distracted. Maybe your dad pushed you too hard. I don't know. You go faster and you feel something new in your body. You feel balance, a new sensation for the first time. You feel balance on the bicycle. The instant you feel balance, your brain rewires itself to make sense. And it goes, oh my gosh, now I get it. Now I get it. I see what crazy Aunt Jenny was talking about. Okay, here's the deal. Before you felt the shift, no amount of information made a difference. Hence, seminars, motivation doesn't make a difference. After you felt the shift, no amount of information was needed. So when people come to the Mindset Gym, they aren't getting life coaching advice. We put them on little bicycles because that shift in experience is what rewires the way they think. Not information, but experience.
Yeah.
So thank you for bringing up the crux with the mentor who's like, hey, I think you should do this. And your brain's like, what are you talking about, man? That's a horrible idea.
Yeah. And I remember I vacillated over that for 3 months. I was like, I can't do this. That's retarded. Like, it's like I would destroy my business if I did that. And I remember thinking, like, I trust this man and I trust what he told me, so I'm going to do it. And then I did it. And the very next month, I made more money and had more of my time back and completely unlocked bottlenecks and was like, oh, I see it all now. Right. So it was a magical moment. And you realize that, like, you leveled up, right? You moved into the next, you put another stat point in your RPG character. Cause you're like, you're like, I've unlocked a new skill. But it's one of those really important things. And I was talking about this with my son the other day, about the difference between head knowledge and heart knowledge, right? And what that is, right? And the reality that is that you can know a lot of things, but until you've experiencing something changes who you are at a core level, right? And the discussion we were having was about becoming a parent. And he was talking, he had questions about what, like, heart knowledge was and why it was doing. And so I was just talking to him. I was like, you understand from a mental level what being a parent is, right? Because you see me do it every day, right? So you know that I'm responsible for your food and for your life and for your house, and, like, you understand all those responsibilities because you see it, right? And you've asked me about it and we've talked about it, and you understand what my role in the family is, right? And that's all head knowledge. But I was like, but the moment that your wife or your doctor or your midwife takes a baby and puts it in your hands for the first time, you'll never know what it's like to be a parent, right? It changes who you are at a very core level. And that sort of experience is what we're talking about, where when you make that shift, it rewires you, it changes your character, and levels you up, so to speak.
You get that leveling up from an experience, not from information. The trap when you get into grown-up world education in seminars, the trap is that we're going to teach you how to ride a bicycle by talking about it and by showing videos of other people riding bicycles. And now we're going to give you a test, and you leave the seminar passing the test with flying colors, with perfect scores, and you know everything there is to know about bicycles and how to ride them, and you get your certificate, and you're under the illusion that you know how to ride a bicycle, but you don't. There's only one way to learn.
Yeah.
Gotta have the experience.
You hear frequently that experience is the best teacher, but other people's experience is the best kind of experience. And that's true to an extent, right? It's better to watch your sister burn her hand on the stove than it is to burn your own hand on the stove, right? But you'll also never really understand. You'll never really understand what mom means when she says the pot is hot until you've touched it, right? And I know because I have a toddler who I spent months telling her, I was like, that pan with the cookies in it is hot, and if you touch it, you will burn yourself. And she kept looking at me and going, Dad, you're crazy. There's cookies on that pan. And the first time that she reached out and she grabbed one of the cookies and burned her hand, she immediately turned and looked at me and was like, hot. She's like, I get it now. I know what you mean when you say hot, because now her hand's on fire. She burnt it. Right? Yeah. And it didn't matter how much my experience I gave her and told her that if you touch that pan, you'll burn yourself. It's going to suck, until she did it herself. And then she was like, I get you. Like, I feel you, Dad.
I hear what you're saying. A small detour there. And this is unsolicited parenting advice for anybody listening. Feel free to mute the next 30 seconds. Your daughter, when she touched the hot pan, wasn't an act of rebellion. It was an act of exploration. Absolutely. It is the only way we learn. We've just given like piano examples and bicycle examples and business seminar examples and podcast examples. This is how we learn. It's a part of how we're wired. It's a necessary step. It wasn't rebellion. It was exploration. Now, we don't want to see our kids get injured, right? We don't want to see them explore that on the interstate, walking across it, right? We don't want to see that. So we do our best to educate, but ultimately it's that experience. A pitfall that I think it's easy to fall into as a parent is to misinterpret that exploration for rebellion and attack on your authority. So after the kid, burns their hand or falls down and gets hurt or whatever it is, the parent tends to respond with guilt and shame. I told you, you're wrong. Why didn't you listen? As opposed to recognizing that the child has already learned the lesson as good as it is ever going to be made. And anything we add on top of that just damages the relationship and the likelihood of them listening the next time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
we can
two things. Two things on that. One, that's the point where you say, well, now that your hand is burned, let's show you how to fix a burn, right? You got other, like you can deepen the relationship that way. That's the first thing. The second thing is if you flip that back into what we were just talking about, when your mentor tells you to do something and you say, hey, that's crazy, I'm not doing that. And you try something and it doesn't work. And you end up in that same place of failure where you've burned your hand. We tend to do the same thing that you might as a parent do to your child, where you think, I did something wrong, I'm a failure, I can't do these things, without understanding that that's part of the process, that the failures, the burned hands, the skinned knees that go with learning to ride a bike is teaching you the same stuff. It's teaching you things not to do. And we don't give ourselves the grace that we need to fail and to continually fail, to fail forward.
That's right. Do you want them afraid of failing? No, we want them to feel safe failing. And one of the ways that we give them that experience is letting them feel safe with us when they fail, as opposed to shaming them for it.
And the same thing goes that you have in your own headspace. You have to do that. You have to be safe to fail and not berate yourself for failing.
It's amazing how many people won't try something as adults for fear that they won't get it right the first time, when not getting it right the first time is actually how learning takes place. If you got it right the first time, there would be no learning.
Yeah. That's the expected outcome is failure.
Yes.
And then the second expected outcome, failure again and again and again and again.
That's right. That's right. Congratulations.
Until suddenly you're like, oh, like I'm failing so very little now that like music is happening.
Now I have music. Until you start working on a harder piece, and then you feel like a beginner again.
Yeah.
Alex Charpin is a business mentor in the marketplace. You might have come across his stuff, but he has a saying that your business is broken, and with any luck, it always will be. Meaning you should always be testing something new or trying something new or growing. And if you're not growing, you're not going to be failing.
Yeah. And if you're not growing, you're dying. You know, it's like the fruit. Once a fruit ripens, it starts to rot. So you never want to be ripe. You want to be ripening. So my next question for you is flip side of your superpower, right? Which is about your fatal flaw, right? And just like every Superman has his kryptonite, or Wonder Woman can't remove her bracelets of victory without going mad, you probably had something you've struggled with, something that's held you back. For me, I struggled with a lot of things for a long time. I struggled with lack of self-care, which really presented itself with having a poor relationship with time, right? And I let my time walk all over me. And we've already talked a little bit about how you can reduce that and how that dramatically increased my business. But I think more important than something that you've struggled with is how have you worked to overcome it, so our audience might learn a little bit from you.
Yes. Happy to share lots of things that I have struggled with. You just cut me off when you're tired of hearing about them. One thing, it was when I was in classical music, I had debilitating stage fright. Even though I was principal viola with the State Symphony, I was absolutely terrified of playing solos. And when I say debilitating, what I mean is I would spend 6 months of my life practicing 5 hours a day for an audition or a solo or recital or whatever it is. And I would get up and play, and my body would go into some sort of out-of-body shock. My eyes would stop seeing. It would be gray. My brain would be a garbled mess. My ears would stop hearing. And anything that happened thereafter was just rote memory. There was no music. It was a robotic function. And this was such a miserable experience to like viscerally happen in my body that I would leave the stage and I would just want to quit. I would want to get out of it. I would want to sell my instrument. So if you're listening and you're thinking of something in your life that you love, but whenever you're around it, it's this miserable, like it sucks. I mean, that's where I was at. And usually when you love something, it kind of becomes a mental illness. You can't not do it. And in my case, I couldn't not be in music. Like I had to, but at the same time, it was just killing me. And this went on for years and years and years. Well, remember, you're only one thought away from your next breakthrough. So at that time, I was teaching seminars, teaching business owners how to access different parts of their brain on purpose. And I'm sitting on stage at the symphony, and I've got this solo coming up that I've got to play. And my body is like starting to go into shock and shut down. And it dawned on me, what if I just did that thing that I teach my business audience members to do? And I had never had that thought before, like revolutionary. And so I did. And that specific principle is your only problem is that you don't have a bigger problem. So, for example, if you're stressed about coming up with $10,000 this month, that's your problem. Down the road, there is somebody who's stressed about coming up with $100,000 this month, and that's their problem. Well, if you were to go sit in their room and listen to how they are thinking about solving that $100,000 problem, suddenly $10,000 is small potatoes. It's no longer a problem. I have friends that struggle with their weight and health and fitness and diet and discipline and all that. I have other friends that used to struggle with that until the day they decided to complete a triathlon. Well, when you are trying to stay alive for 120 miles, that's a much bigger problem. And my friends that compete triathlons, they have incredible discipline for their diet and exercise regimes. And it's not because they're superhuman. It's because they have a bigger problem that they're trying to solve. Gandhi, by the way, had debilitating stage fright. It caused him to fail miserably as a lawyer. That's where he first got started. He would flee the courtroom. He was so terrified of speaking. But then he moved to South Africa, and he noticed that his countrymen were horribly oppressed in the British apartheid, and he decided he would take on something bigger, which was peace in India. Now, at that time, India was divided 4 different ways by a religious and caste civil war. And Gandhi, nobody appointed him, trained him, equipped him, asked him nothing. Gandhi just out of nowhere says, there will be peace in India because I said there will be. He made himself cause in that matter. Now, when you represent peace for an entire nation, then giving a speech in front of 20,000 people isn't even a blip on your radar. You could care less. So that's where I was with music. I was terrified of playing these solos. But what was the business I was about? I was trying to get all the notes right. I was trying to sound good. I was trying to play my best. By the way, there's no such thing as playing your best or doing your best. Please stop telling your kids that. It is horrible advice that only sets them up for failure. The reason being, there is no point in time that you can say that was your best. The closer you get to it, the more aware you become, there's more you could have done. So striving to do your best is a target you can never hit. You can only miss. This is guaranteed recipe for disaster. So there I was trying to play my best, which doesn't exist. We talked about that. Get all the notes right. There's no such thing as getting all the notes right, because the closer you get, the better you get, the more aware you become that there's still more to do. I was trying to play well. This is all small potatoes. So in that moment, I said, what if I took on a bigger problem? What is a bigger problem than playing this solo well? How my audience feels. That's a bigger problem. There's 2,000 of them. So I decided in that moment that I would be up to the business of my audience having the felt experience of being loved, the received experience. That's what I was going to be about. Now, I had never done this before. And by the way, it's not like being afraid of public events was how I'm wired, like I'm an introverted, shy person or something. I mean, I loved skydiving. I loved giving speeches. But for whatever reason, playing a solo was kryptonite, terrifying, shut me down. So I decided I would be about my audience having the felt experience of being loved. And I go up to play, and my brain fires off that automatic response. Oh, you might miss this note. But I was about a new game. So I had to say, it's okay. I don't care if I miss the note. I really don't. I am about my audience having the felt experience of being loved. I believe that's what the composer had in mind when they wrote this phrase. And then the next note would come, and my brain would fire it off. Oh, this is a hard shift. You know, you kind of miss the shift sometimes when you're practicing. I don't care. I don't care if I miss the shift. I am about something bigger. The felt experience of my audience. I am standing that they would have the received experience of being loved. Note after note after note, my brain would fire off what it had been doing for 20 years, and I would have to stand for a new possibility. This was exhausting. I had never done this before. It took an incredible amount of focus and dedication to stay on target. At the end of that, I had, in fact, played better, cleaner, more in tune, more musical than I had ever done under pressure in my entire life. But so what? The victory was that for the first time, I couldn't wait to play music again. And every time before that, I wanted to sell my instrument and get out of it entirely. So that was something that was killing me. And we solved it by taking on a bigger problem. Happy to share other forms of kryptonite in business or self-employed, however much time you have. I got lots of them.
That was brilliant. Like, I think that was worth the whole interview just by itself, personally. Because one of the things I always tell people, and I tell myself, I tell other people, but mostly I tell myself, is that if you want to get better answers, you have to ask yourself a better question. Right? And what you're talking about is another way of sort of the same thing, right? Is what's the bigger problem? And because you have to put yourself in a different mindset. And one of the things that I do in my business is we do instructional design. Right? So we help people productize their knowledge. And I always tell people, your products, what you're trying to do with someone is you're going to take them from a place of pain and lack to a place of joy, right, and pleasure, right? You're going to move them. They have this problem, and you're going to help them solve that problem. They're going to get to a new place. They're going to live in the promised land. But every time you help someone do that, every time you take someone from a place of pain and lack to a place of joy and pleasure, what you do is you introduce a new higher level of problem, right? My favorite extreme example of this is you have someone who is broke who wins the lottery, right? Before they won the lottery, they had money problems. After they won the lottery, they had money management problems, right? You didn't remove problems from their life. What you did is you gave them a higher level of problem. And higher level problems are how you get to higher level thinking. So what you're talking about is how to make that shift mentally in your head and I really particularly liked your story of, if I've got a $10,000 problem, I'm trying to solve that. What if I sat on the floor and listened to someone who's trying to solve a $100,000 problem, right? Because if you're looking at their thinking and what they're doing, your problem's not that big anymore. And you're immediately putting yourself into that world of higher level problems. And if you're working on higher level problems, lower level problems are easier to solve. So my understanding is you teach people how to do that, how to get into the state of mind that lets you work on higher level problems.
Yes. And we do that with mindset push-ups. It's the bicycle experience. And that just avoids the dilemma you described with the mentor saying, this is the fastest way out of it. And you're like, that makes no sense at all. And this avoids the life coach saying, I don't know. What do you think you should do? Well, come on. What you think you should do is what has you in that situation to start with. So the way we access those new neural networks is with bicycle-like experiences. We call those mindset push-ups. And these are problems that in order to solve the problem, your brain has to rewire itself in order to make new connections with the intelligence in your body.
Okay, so now normally we get into how you offer things to people at the end of the interview, but I really am curious, how do you help people? Like, what do you actually do for people to, do these mindset push-ups? Is it like like training courses you have, or books, or how do you actually offer services to people to learn these skills?
Well, it's a series of exercises, and you rearrange them into different orders that you do the exercises depending on your goals. Just like when you go see a fitness trainer, do you want flexibility? Do you want stamina throughout your day? Do you want to look good without your shirt on at the beach? Do you want endurance? Like what do you want? And so we just arrange the exercises around those goals. And the goals usually come from what happens when we map out the thinking patterns. What that reveals about the blind spots, the tendencies and the ways of thinking, and the potential that's really there. And then we go through doing the exercises that rewire those things. Some exercises, some people, this is probably new information. People might not know this. Used to, when you would get a concussion, we would treat concussion with medicine, narcotics, rest, sleep. we would treat concussion with the absence of stimuli. So like no sound, no light, and just letting your brain rest. And while we still do some of those things, what we have found heals the brain faster is actually new stimuli that forces the brain to rewire itself to deal with. And there's actually a pretty neat interview with somebody that was experiencing this outside of course, the Mindset Gym, but Dale Earnhardt Jr., in his interview with Joe Rogan, he talks about his concussion and what the doctors put him through to heal his brain and the difference it made in his life. But what the doctors put him through to do that, those are what I would consider to be mindset push-ups. So for example, the doctor might have him standing on one foot with one eye closed. So this is a different way of balance, right? When you've got both eyes open, your brain has different data that it's comparing to your inner ear. When you have one eye open, it sort of skews the data that your brain, so your brain has to make an adjustment in that algorithm. But then standing on one foot, and now he's having to shake a weight that is purposely knocking him off balance. So here your brain is having to learn to juggle these three balls. It's having to make new connections. And then on top of that, he's saying the alphabet backwards, or, you know, multiplying numbers by 3 or something like that. So it's different calculations that his brain is having to do at the same time. This calculation spurs new neural growth, makes new connections, gives your brain kind of a new set of computer hardware to make sense of the world with. And that's one of the ways that it is able to regrow and compensate for concussions. And it, like, you wouldn't think that. What does balance, what does coordination have to do with, you know, the ringing in my head or the ADD that I'm experiencing after the car wreck? I don't understand until you do it. And then your brain calms down and you're like, whoa, wow. So brain gym stuff, mindset push-up stuff. Those are some examples.
So out of curiosity, is this the kind of thing that, say, you know, because I know this happens a lot with entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs struggle with things like ADHD. And they're like, I don't have the ability to focus the way that I want to focus, right? I get distracted by this or that or the other thing. That you can develop specific training protocols, mental push-ups, so to speak, that help them be able to develop those types of responses. Like, you know, I want to be able to just focus when I want to focus and have that kind of control. Is that the kind of thing that you guys can do and teach?
Okay, a couple things there. Boy, that's a can of worms. All right.
I know.
So at the Mindset Gym, mindset push-ups, very effective, instant result. Just like you go see a trainer, you leave that gym session with results in your body, right? You know, you're sore, you're tired, you feel the shifts, you feel the muscles. Mindset Gym, very, very effective for confidence, for clarity, for certainty, for clearing the head trash, for clearing limiting beliefs, for attitudes, for thinking at a higher level effectively, so that you get out of, and hopefully maybe in this conversation, we'll be able to talk about some specific thinking patterns, what they look like on paper, how we recognize them, and how they show up in your life. Because the mindset push-ups clear that right up and get you thinking at a higher level where everything in your life just flows so much easier because you're coming up naturally with more efficient solutions. This is different than, say, focus or ADD. Focus or ADD is more of a hardware problem, not a way of using the hardware problem. Now you certainly can make a tremendous impact on focus or ADD. Like Wim Hof breathing makes a difference. Meditation makes a difference. There's a lot of body gym, brain gym exercises that make a difference, like the Dale Earnhardt Jr. type thing. You can go to other sites like I think Brain HQ or something like that has got some little exercises you can do on the computer that are meditative in nature. Those make a difference. They do. It's a short-term difference that is accumulative over a very long period of time. It takes a while for those to add up, and it requires kind of daily discipline to maintain. A much easier solution is chemical. A lot of people come to me because they want to feel like Tony Robbins, or they want that kind of aggression that they see in Grant Cardone. They want to have that killer instinct drive. They want to be like that. So they come to me and they want me to wire their brain to do that. And I'm like, dude, just go to the doctor and get a shot of testosterone.
Yeah.
That's all you need. Or they come and they're like, man, I'm just not sleeping good. Can I do some mindset push-ups to sleep good? Are you kidding? How about you stop drinking caffeine and go for a walk? Like, chemical changes solve the vast majority of these problems. ADD, my brain can't focus. I just need to get, what kind of mindset push-ups can I do so that my brain can focus better? Are you kidding? Just go get some Ritalin. Stop drinking caffeine. Maybe drink some more water and exercise some more. Like, we can solve this today, instantly. Oh, I just feel depressed and I've always felt depressed. Chemical. We can fix it right away. So I would separate hardware issues from software issues. And people, I mentioned these chemical changes or medicine, testosterone shot, vitamin B shot, maybe some Ritalin or Adderall or whatever. And these are hot topics and people get really, polarized about it. All I would say there is if you opened up some Chef Boyardee SpaghettiOs and you poured those SpaghettiOs into a bowl and I said, all right, I want you to spell the word confident. And you look into that bowl and the only letters in that bowl, like the whole can, was made up of nothing more than the letters S, the letter A, and the letter D. That was the only thing in the bowl. You would say, I can't. I don't have those letters in the bowl. Right. And you wouldn't feel like inadequate. You wouldn't feel like there was something wrong with you. You'd be like, I don't have those letters in the bowl. That's what it's like trying to solve hardware problems without the necessary chemicals. Thoughts in your head are nothing more than electrical signals being shuttled back and forth in little chemical vehicles. If the chemicals aren't present, your brain can't make the thought. So that's why it's ridiculous beating yourself up if you've been depressed for 20 years, beating yourself up and refusing to take some medicine that would fix it overnight. If the chemical isn't present, the brain can't make the new thought. The same for focus. Now, once those chemicals are present and we have a sense of balance, some people achieve that with modern medicine, some people achieve that with exercise and diet and water. But as we age, sometimes exercise and water and diet isn't enough anymore. Regardless, if the hardware is functioning as it should, mindset push-ups rewire that way of thinking to a higher level instantly.
That's really fascinating. And the only example I have from my life is with my, what do you call him? He's my fitness coach. And he does a lot of high level stuff. He works high performance entrepreneurs. That's his goal. And we did a lot of work on increasing testosterone and increasing muscle mass. I put on 15 pounds of muscle in the last year, doubled my testosterone numbers, all sorts of cool things, getting the hardware right. And one of the things I struggled with a lot, he was like, I had a hard time falling asleep at night. It's like, but you need, like, for what you do and how active you are, you need to be getting 8 hours of sleep every night. And I'm getting like 5 to 6 because I have a hard time falling asleep at night. I'll lay in bed and just like can't get my brain to shut off. And he was like, the easiest solution to stuff like that is take a couple of ounces of CBD oil an hour before bedtime, and that shit will just knock you out and you sleep like a rock. And it doesn't cause any chemical problems like, what do you call it? Like Benadryl or some of the other ones. And so he sent me a bottle of it and I started using that and I was like, overnight, change that problem.
Yes. Speaking of which, if there is a sleep thing going on, if the quality of your sleep is not where it needs to be, and you have already cut out caffeine, and you're already exercising, and you have what most people would consider to be a reasonable diet, if that is still the case, yes, absolutely, CBD will make a tremendous difference. Now, for some people, CBD doesn't work. Just their body's metabolism, they wake up feeling like hungover. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So they go to Ritalin. I mean, not Ritalin. They go to melatonin. The danger of melatonin, and there's a great interview with Andrew Huberman, and I think he did this with Tim Ferriss. I think melatonin reduces your testosterone. A lot of parents give melatonin to their preteens to help them calm down and go to sleep. It's like the worst thing because it totally jacks with their testosterone cycle that they need for going into puberty, for crying out loud. So melatonin, super, super dangerous. What you can take instead, though, is magnesium. And I would, encourage anybody, go take a magnesium pill before you go to sleep and see if you don't wake up more rested.
It's interesting. And I really like I know it's a completely different discussion, but learning how to get the hardware right is just as important as learning how to get the software right. So we got lots of resources on our podcast if you're looking for more of that kind of stuff. But yeah, I appreciate that answer. And I like the way that you separated that, because I wouldn't have made that connection, but from what we were talking about without you sort of bringing that up. So I appreciate that. I do want to ask you about your next question. We will get to some practical stuff here in just a minute, but I want to ask about the flip side of, the next thing I want to talk about is the common enemy, right? Every superhero has an arch nemesis, and it's something they have to fight against in their world. And in the world of business, it takes a lot of forms, but generally speaking, we put it in the context of your clients. And it's a mindset or it's a flaw that they have when they sign on the dotted line with the mindset gem, right? That if you had your magic wand, you could just bop them on the head and you wouldn't have to deal with that anymore. So you could actually help them get the results better, cheaper, faster, higher degree that they came to you for more immediately. What is that sort of common enemy with what it is that you do?
More. What we need is more. More just gets you more of the way of thinking that you already have. And while that way of thinking does produce limited results, or you wouldn't still be doing it, more is just more limited results. So more, that is the common enemy. More, the hustle and grind ethos, the work harder, the put in your time, the focus on getting things done. That's the common enemy. Being focused on getting things done reduces your productivity. I'm happy to talk about that. Using a to-do list and checking things off your to-do list, that lowers your income. Happy to talk about that as well. And being focused on getting things done, this is why people on one hand pride themselves on being achievers and checking things off their list and getting things done. And boy, you can always count on them to get things done. And boy, they're a real hustle and grinder and go with them. Yeah, but do you ever have more on your to-do list than you have time to get done? Oh yeah, man, all the time. Do you try like working harder and faster to clear that up? Oh yeah, absolutely. That's the best way to clear it up. And what happens at the end of the day? Do you still have more on your list and there's time to get done? Yeah, all the time. It's this way of thinking. And this is what in my work with the mind scan, we call this a blind spot. A blind spot is a way of thinking that makes so much sense that it's impossible for you to see why it's actually blocking what's really possible in your life, because you can't see the label from the inside of the bottle. And it makes so much sense that more action gets more results. How are you supposed to argue with that? That when you're in it and you're in that way of thinking, it's impossible to see why that is the reason that you never have enough time, never have enough money. It's the way of thinking. So the common enemy is more effort.
I want to dive a little into the to-do list, the checklist thing, because I've tried a number of times over the last 10 years to do checklists and follow different things from like, you know, that one where you have something on your, and you check it off every day, and, you know, you try to get the string of days, or, you know, you only have like 6 things on your list. You never have more than 6 things on your list. I've tried all those things. And the thing that I have come to the conclusion of is that they're all terrible. And not that they don't work for some people, they've never worked for me. And so I don't use to-do lists anymore, or any sort of checklists. And I'm curious to see, without having heard your response to this, where my current way, how it fits with what you teach. And what I do now, and I'm going to use my RV renovation as a project because I'm working on renovating the RV. There's a lot of things that go into renovating the RV, from floors to cabinets to painting and rebuilding stuff, all sorts of stuff. But we're also living in it and traveling, right? So the way I have to think about the project is in terms, like, I have to break it down into really little bits. Like, we're talking like really little small pieces. It's like, I'm going to work on this piece here, whatever it is, a little tiny thing. And what I'll do is, like, I have a couple of hours to work on that renovation. And what I'll do is I'll be like, I need to figure out, I've got 2 hours to put towards this, whatever that is. What is a piece that I can take from start to finish in that 2 hours? Now, taking something from start to finish in 2 hours might mean, because I have other things to do, that I'm going to have to make some decisions I wouldn't otherwise make. As an example, I'm going to finish the floor in this room. It means I'm going to cut a few tiles that are going to end up being waste, because when I do the floor in the other room, I'm going to have to pull those tiles back out and lay whole ones, right? So I'm adding a little bit of inefficiency to my process for the purpose of having something I can finish in a small block of time and be done. And then I do that in my business too. So this is just an example, but I've got this thing. What can I finish? Maybe it's just a headline on the blog post. Maybe it's just this next thing that I need to finish. And again, maybe it's not the most efficient way to do it, but I'm finishing. And what I'm doing is I'm stacking finishes over the course of time. And what I have noticed is, as I stack finishes over the course of time, that snowballs. And it snowballs rapidly, where you get to the point where you're like, I have gotten so much done in such a small amount of time that it blows me away how quickly you can progress through big projects. Like, I'm renovating an entire RV, and I haven't even messed with our life. We're still traveling, we're still moving, we're still using the RV. And, you know, if anyone who's ever watched the fix and flip TV shows know what it's like to renovate things, right? It doesn't change doing it in an RV. It's just that messy and just that big. But when you go from start to finish, and then when I finish, all the tools get put away and the spot is usable, right? Like, 'cause that's just part of our way we have to do it. And I've noticed that as I do that in my business as well, like, I have to get this next thing to be finished, right? And whether that's, I need to finish this email, and then that email gets stuck into the thing and it starts getting put into the autoresponder, it starts getting used. Now, when I put in the next email, I might have to change the transition a little bit on that first email so it fits in with the second one, but then I'll add that in and it's finished. And it's stacking assets, right? Instead of saying I have to write 50 emails, right, or 6 months worth of follow-up content, because you should have 6 months worth of follow-up content for your business, but you have to look at them like little puzzle pieces, that you finish this one and then you come back and you finish the next one. That's the way I approach it nowadays. I'm curious how that fits in with your methodology.
Well, there's a lot of principles that you touched on there that I really like. One of them was planning. So you have this situation and you're like, how can I get this done in this amount of time? That's a planning thing. There's a mindset that values action above all. These are the impatient people. When they're sitting in a business meeting, after 5 minutes, they're irritated because it's clear to them what needs to be done. Why are we still here talking about it? I could have gotten something done during this time. They are irritated at the thought of documenting what they're doing, writing processes down. That's a waste of time. It's organized in my head. By the time I write it down, I could have actually gotten something done. Very irritated trying to delegate or train other people to help. By the time I train them, I could have done it myself. After I train them, they're just going to screw it up. I'm going to have to redo it. It's like 3 times inefficient. It's just faster for me to do it. This way of thinking. And so for that way of thinking, when they look at their to-do list and there's more there than they have time to get done, their brain goes, there's more here than I have time to get done. Therefore, I need to work harder and faster. What you described was, how can this be done in this amount of time? And that forced you to realize there's more here than I have time to get done. Working harder and faster is a waste of time. That's just going to make this a bigger mess. So instead, what is the right order to do things? What is the right amount to do? What should be done first? Planning ahead. Do I have everything I need? So that's one principle that I really, really like that you mentioned. The other principle was what we call the most productive day you have all year. So if you think, and if you're listening, like I would encourage you, please search your mind and tell me what is the single most productive day you have all year. Of all the days in the year, there is one day that you get way more done than any other day. What is that day? Drum roll, please. It is the day before you go on vacation, because you know you've got to be on that plane at 8 o'clock the next morning. And so the whole day before, your brain is working ahead. It's like, okay, so I'm on this side of town, so it's most efficient if I go to this store and this store instead of that way. Your brain is constantly working ahead to make sure things fit within that time period. And to fit within time is a planning issue, not a hustle issue. The other thing is, if you think of your favorite sport, basketball, what's another good example? Football, soccer, hockey. Take your favorite sport and remove the clock. Remove the clock. So we tell the professional athletes, okay, you guys just go out there and let us know when you're done. There's no clock. Just let us know when you're done. Notice that if we remove the clock, we remove the game. You wouldn't see world-class athletic performance anymore. It's actually the clock that causes them to fly through the air and miraculously contort their body in these amazing feats of... It's the clock, and it's not the start time that causes that. It's the end time. Many people, when they plan their day, because they're in that hustle and grind mentality, they're like, I need to start working on this task at 2 o'clock. Who cares? It's the by when time that matters, and that's what you described. How can this be done within this period of time? By this time, I have to be done. I have to have the house cleaned up, have to be able to get on with the rest of our day. I can't have this. So how do I get it done by this end time? That's the second principle that you mentioned that I thought was really, really important. If you have time, I can talk a little bit about why the core tenets at the Mindset Gym about productivity are true.
Absolutely.
You tell me.
Like, this is fascinating. Let's keep going.
Okay. So a couple core tenets. Working smarter is a lie. We covered that because the brain can only think of what already makes sense, and that's what has you stuck to start with. If you're focused on getting things done, that reduces your productivity. And the second one being checking things off your to-do list reduces your income. Let's take a look at those. Being focused on getting things done, why does that reduce your productivity? The reason is because doing something doesn't address the reason it had to be done to start with. Returning emails for customer support today does not fix the problem of having to return them tomorrow. As a matter of fact, anytime anytime you send an email, you just generate 1.2 more emails. You're actually creating more work for you to do by being in your email. Now, what does solve the problem of the customer support email? Well, we can look at the customer journey. What were we communicating with them before they ever made their first purchase with us? We can look at the post-purchase. What were they communicating with them after they purchased? What was our follow-up sequence like? How much time did we spend nurturing them and relationship and setting expectations? Did we pre-qualify them? Did we have the wrong customers in that pipeline that's causing those complaints because we're actually selling to the wrong people? This is solving it as a systematic level. And once you put that in place, you never again have to deal with those emails. Another way to look at that, instead of returning those emails and responding to those urgent demands, I got to get the contract in the mail, I got to renegotiate this lease, I got to schedule this appointment, I got to reschedule. Instead of that, because if you're doing the work, you're falling behind, you're the bottleneck. Instead of doing the task, and this drives achievers nuts. This absolutely drives them nuts. Document the most important thing about what you're doing and how you're doing it. Write that process out. Now, this drives achievers nuts because they're like, but that's a waste of time. I could have gotten something done during that block of time. Yeah, but tomorrow you'll still be on the hook doing it. And you can't solve a bad strategy with stubbornness. So you document the time, and then you spend some more time finding the right person. Is this the right person? Do they have the right mentality? Do they think the right way? And then training them. And then after they screw it up, because they're going to, you go back and train them again. And after they screw it up, because they're going to, you go back and train them again. And you nurture that. And after a couple rounds, you will never again have to do that task. It solves it at the system level.
A couple of things that I think are really important about that. One of them is because one of the things we teach is how to build processes. And that's actually what I was doing before we got on this interview, was working on processes. Is when you're teaching someone a process, more important than the steps of the process is the why. Why are the steps of the process the way they are? And if you start to teach your people why the steps are the way that they are, then what you start to do is you start to teach them to understand how the process was built. And if they understand how the process was built, then they start asking better questions about how the process works, right? And one of the things I've noticed with my team is the better I do with teaching them the process, like the whys behind the process, then they start not just owning the process, but also looking at the process and saying, now that I understand it, I've gone through it a few times and I understand why it was built this way. I see an inefficiency here. How about we fix it or make it better? And they come back with solutions, right? And so you're teaching people not to just be cogs in a machine, but to be the developers of machines. So anyways, that's the first thing.
Excellent. And it is a way of thinking. One way of thinking says action gets results. So where is action that I can take? Another way of thinking says, if I'm doing the work, I'm falling behind. So how else can this get done without me getting in the way?
Yeah.
And then that starts to scale even farther as you realize that if you're the one training your assistant, you're doing the work. You're falling behind.
Which brings me to my second point about what you said. And it is about, have you ever read the book Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card?
No. Tell me again. I'll put it on my list.
Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card.
Ender's Game. All right.
Yeah. It is the best-selling sci-fi novel since it's been published. Every time they release it, it sells out. They release it every year. And since 1978, it's sold out of its publishing every single year. It's phenomenal. One of the best books you'll probably ever read in the fiction world. But the reason I bring it up is one of the things that the main character does is he has this mindset that I'm not going to just win this battle, but I want to win every battle into the future. Right? And that's one of the things that I've always thought about as I build things in my business and in my world is like, I don't just want to win today's battle. I want to do the work today that lets me win every battle that comes in the future in this area. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. I won't tell you what happens there because it would spoil the story, but that it's such a dynamic principle. And like I remember one time in college I had a very large gentleman who is a good friend of mine now. But he was a power lifter. Like his arms were bigger around than my waist kind of thing. And was upset with me for some reason. I can't remember all the details, but the basics were meet me out on the back, in the back, and we'll solve this like gentlemen. And what he meant was, I'll beat the shit out of you. And I looked at him up there, right? Because he was much larger than me. And I said, if I meet you out on the back patio, I'm going to show up at 200 yards with a rifle and you won't walk away. I was like, because as far as I'm concerned, every battle is a battle to the death, right? So I have to win now and I have to win forever. And that's the way I approach a lot of problems in business is how do I win now and win with finality, right? Which I know is kind of like a very gruesome way to look at a problem. But when you think that way, you think of how do I build a system that is going to take care of itself in the future, right? Because that's how, you mentioned several things. Like if you're training your staff, then you're going to have to continue training your staff. But if you train your staff, how to train your staff, that's a higher level problem that you solved, right? And you're creating things that move without you, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's such an important skill to learn. So anyways, that's it. What you described is just a very high level business process. And I wanted to make sure people saw it.
Yes, a way of thinking. And so the question there is, what would it look like for me to never have to do this again?
Yeah.
What would that look like? And that gets your brain thinking of higher level, more efficient solutions. Now, the other claim was that checking things off your to-do list lowers your income. And I would imagine several people listening are absolutely pounding away at the keyboard, sending you threatening messages for having me on as a guest, for speaking such blasphemous words. Here's what's going on. If you look at your to-do list, and most people have the same to-do list every day, which is, I would submit as evidence that if you're focused on getting things done, it doesn't make a hill of beans difference. Anytime you're doing the same task twice, you want to think really hard about it. Because if you do it more than once, that's an indication a system could be doing that more efficiently for you. But look at your to-do list, and most people don't because it's the same thing they do every day. I bet you that 9 out of 10 things on your list could be delegated to someone for $15 an hour, provided they had the right system to follow, it was simple enough, and they were trained in the right way how to follow that system. If that was in place, you could delegate any of those tasks for $15 an hour. What that means is the more excited you are about checking things off your to-do list, the more happy you are for paying yourself the lowest amount possible during that block of time.
That is a brilliant way to put that. And it's absolutely true. And one of the things that I've realized, the more I've built systems in my business, is the more free I become, right? And I have an exercise that I started running myself through a number of years ago when I was working 12 to 18 hours a day, trying to get as much done as possible. And one of those things was learning how to put creative restrictions on my time. And learning how to put creative restrictions on my time was like, hey, what would happen if instead of working, 100 hours a week, I only worked 40, right? What if instead of working 7 or 8 days or 7 days a week, I would work 6, and instead of 6, maybe 5, and instead of 5, maybe 4, and instead of 8 hours a day, maybe 4 hours a day, 4 days a week. And the more I did that over the course of the years, I've gotten to the point where I run my business now on an average about 4 hours a day, 4 days a week. And I make a order of magnitude more money now than I did when I was working, 80 hours a week. Like to the point where when I was working 120 hours a week and like puking in the bushes outside because I was so overworked that like, that's just where I was at. I paid more in taxes this year than I made that year.
Wow.
Right? Like that's the kind of difference we're talking about.
Yes. Yes.
So it's incredibly powerful to learn how to do that and to learn how to, you make more money by working less because it forces you to focus on what's the important stuff, the stuff that only you can do. Right? So only do what only you can do is a principle that I live by. And then I do the same thing with my staff. How do I build systems so that they're only doing what only they can do? So anyways, that's
there's one of the mindset push-ups that we take people through. It causes their brain to rewire itself around the way they understand the value of their time. I've never seen anybody come in less than $500 an hour. And because of that, we call it the $500 an hour push-up. But most people that are self-employed in some capacity are usually around $1,000 or $2,000 an hour. And it just comes to your brain making that new connection between the thing that only you can do as opposed to what brings value to your business. And they aren't always the same. Many times people are surprised to find out that the thing only they can do, somebody else can do better, faster, cheaper. But the thing that brings the most value to their business is worth $1,000 an hour when they're doing that. So it's an interesting exercise, but I liked what you were talking about, spending more time in my sweet spot and letting other people do the stuff that I'm not as good at.
Well, and now a quick word from our show's sponsor. Hey there, fellow podcaster. Having a weekly audio and video show on all the major online networks that builds your brand, creates fame, and drives sales for your business doesn't have to be hard. I know it feels that way because you've tried managing your show internally and realize how resource intensive it can be. You felt the pain of pouring 8 to 10 hours of work into just getting 1 hour of content published and promoted all over the place. You see the drain on your resources, but you do it anyways because you know how powerful it is. Heck, you've probably even tried some of those automated solutions and ended up with stuff that makes your brand look cheesy and cheap. That's not helping grow your business. Don't give up though. The struggle ends now. Introducing Push Button Podcasts, a done-for-you service that will help you get your show out every single week without you lifting a finger after you've pushed that stop record button. We handle everything else: uploading, editing, transcribing, writing, research, graphics, publication, and promotion, all done by real humans who know, understand, and care about your brand almost as much as you do. Empowered by our own proprietary technology, our team will let you get back to doing what you love while we handle the rest. Check us out at pushbuttonpodcast.com/hero for 10% off the lifetime of your service with us, and see the power of having an audio and video podcast growing and driving micro celebrity status and business in your niche without you having to lift more than a finger to push that stop record button. Again, that's pushbuttonpodcast.com/hero. See you there. And now, back to the Hero Show.
Our interview is getting a little lengthy, and I do have some stuff I've got to get to. So I'm gonna ask you one more question here before we get to the end of the interview, and it's about your guiding principles. So one of the things that makes heroes heroic is that they live by a code. For instance, Batman never kills his enemies; he only ever puts them in Arkham Asylum. So as we sort of wrap up the interview, I want to talk about the top 1, maybe 2 principles that you live your life by. Maybe something you wish you knew when you started your own hero's journey.
So for me, it would be inspiring self-expression. I every year am learning a new skill. One year I was learning how to do a backflip on a bicycle. One year I was learning how to split an arrow, Robin Hood style. So inspiring self-expression would be one. Just a guiding principle for me. I'm not saying that should work for everyone else. And the other one would be remember what you want. Remember what you want. And I'll give you some examples of that. My son, something might not be going well in his life. And I watch other parents, they will, threaten or ground or spank as if might makes right. I'm stronger, so I'm right. Or they will shame or belittle. And so remember what you want. The way that plays out is what do I ultimately want? Do I want my son to not have done this thing, past tense? Or do I want my son in the future to always feel safe talking to me and to value the relationship he has with me? If I'm clear on what I really, really want, is it a change in behavior or is it a long-term value in relationship? Then it kind of changes how I respond to that situation. With his mom. I mean, come on, parents don't always get along. And if something is falling apart there, remember what I want. What do I really, really want? Do I want her to do this thing different? Or do I want to always have an amazing relationship that I'm thankful for? Like, what do I really, really want? And when I get clear on what I really, really want, then suddenly whatever's happening in the present is just small potatoes.
Yeah, that's such an
important. So I would say those two things.
And I know for me, like I follow, by the way, creative self-expression, wanting to split an arrow with Robin Hood. My dad won the 1978 World Championships by putting one arrow in the back of another. And so anyways, there's just fun connection there. The second part where you're talking about knowing what you really want is such an important thing. And I wish more people understood that, because I know for myself, you mentioned your relationship with your wife. My wife and I are very different people. And, she is significantly more creative, and being a creative, she's more messy than I am. She puts things in places that I would never put them, and puts things all over the place. Oh, look, there's your arrow in the back of the other. Unfortunately, my dad didn't get to keep his because he was in Germany and in the Air Force, and the war in Kosovo happened, and they wouldn't let him take it on the plane. So he's just got a picture of it. But yeah, that's super cool. But one of the things, my principles like with my wife is like, I care more about my relationship with her than I do with how she keeps her stuff, right? Sure, it would be nice if she was as neat as me, but that's not really the thing that I want, right? I don't really care how neat she is. What I really care about is the long-term relationship that we have together. And when you understand that about your relationship, you understand what actually matters to you. And, you know, you spread that out to everything in your life. If you really actually think about what you want, it changes how you respond to the situations you're in. So that's a really important.
Which is why most sensible couples just pay the $200 a month for a house cleaner.
Yeah.
Usually the person who tends to be messy isn't opposed to things being clean. It's just not a personal value, so they're not going to clean them. But they don't care if someone else cleans them. And the person who values it being clean, if they're clear that what they ultimately want is a relationship that always works, then suddenly $200 a month is, it's nothing.
It's irrelevant.
It's a lot cheaper than divorce.
So that is basically a wrap on our interview, and it's been fascinating. But I do finish every interview with a simple challenge, which I think is how you probably ended up here. And it's called the Heroes Challenge. And we do this to help get access to stories we might not otherwise find on our own. So the question is simple. Do you have someone in your life or in your network that you think is a cool story? Who are they? First names are fine. And why do you think they should come share their story with us here on the Hero Show? First person that comes to mind for you.
Craig Rizzoli with High Speed Daddy.
High Speed Daddy. What do they do?
So Craig Rizzoli is ex-military, and there's so many people that I would love to share. He makes kind of military-like diaper bags.
Oh, genius! I think I've
it's
seen
the
him.
idea. It's the idea of taking guys who are in that culture, you know, that mindset, that patriot, you know, first responder, military, but also giving them a way to get in touch with fathering a baby and also being a father. So he produces a line of like military spec diaper bags and blankets and whoobies and lunch bags and stuff like that. It's a really, really interesting community and product. But yeah, Craig Rizzoli, he would be great.
Yeah. So what I'll do is we'll reach out afterwards, see if we can get an introduction to him, get him on the show. But you know, in comic books, there's always the crowd of people at the end who cheer and clap their hands for, you know, the heroes and their work. So as we close, our analogous to that is, where can people find you if they want your help in the future? Where can they light up the bat signal, so to speak, and say, hey, Jarrod, I would really love to learn how to do some of these mental push-ups in my own life and learn to think at a higher level. So 2 questions. Where can they find you, and who are the right types of people to reach out?
So the right types of people are those who understand that the next evolution in their life isn't going to come from a marketing or sales tip or trick. It's going to come from them leveling up as people. It's going to come from them taking their mindset to the next level. And these are people that have tried working harder and tried doing it on their own. And they have been to seminars, and they have journaled, and they have tried meditating, and it's not working. And they realize that they can't think their way into it. So for those people that have a premium on maximizing their potential as humans and their thinking patterns, they come to the Mindset Gym. This isn't always entrepreneurs. Granted, for entrepreneurs, the financial difference it makes is stupid. Almost everybody doubles their income and cuts their hours in half in the first year. It's absolutely ridiculous. But it is equally effective for people, maybe, I want to say, dealing with more intrapersonal issues, you know, struggling with esteem or worth or trauma in their life. This is the fastest way to rewire the brain. Now, how to do that and where to go. And for that, I would say, don't take my word for it. Don't believe anything I have said. You can come to mindsetperformance.co. You can take the mind scan for yourself, and you can see if you think that what it reveals is helpful in your specific situation. But don't take my word for it. mindsetperformance.co.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of this with us today, Jarrod. It has been fascinating. One of my longest interviews to date, which I have not even a little bit sad about, because I got a lot out of this conversation. Thank you so much for coming on today. Do you have any final words of wisdom for my audience before I hit this stop record button?
Yes. If there was a sign that would be up on your wall, please have that sign say, if I'm doing the work, I'm falling behind.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jarrod.